AI 人工智能绝对是当下最火的词，从 ChatGPT 到 DeepSeek， 从自动驾驶到AI 绘画， AI 已经悄悄渗透到我们生活的每个角落。但你真的了解 AI 吗？有人说它是未来科技，有人说它是人类终结者，还有人把它当作财富密码。现在很多人都很担心 AI 会不会抢走我们的工作？失业的压力近在眼前，程序员、设计师，甚至医生都在问：我会被 AI 取代吗？更有人担心 AI 会不会像科幻电影里那样统治人类，掌控世界？还有人摩拳擦掌，想要靠 AI 一夜暴富，成为下一个科技巨头。而对于父母来说， AI 带来的不仅是机遇，还有恐慌。孩子的教育该怎么办？ AI 时代学什么才不会被淘汰？人过中年，他们自己又该如何适应这个 AI 驱动的世界？ AI 究竟会给世界带来什么翻天覆地的影响？是机遇还是威胁？是工具还是主宰？今天我们要揭开 AI 神秘的面纱，看看它究竟会带来怎样的变革，人类将何去何从？最近我采访了我的朋友林子卿博士，和他的对话不仅充满深度，更彻底颠覆了我对 AI 固有的认知和想象。这次交流让我受益匪浅，也让我意识到必须要把这个视频分享出来，让更多人了解 AI 背后的真相。
Thank you for inviting me. 谢谢您请我跟你聊天。
我中文很棒。
哪里，我只会说一点点，但是 I know that many of the people that are watching this because they follow your broadcasts are probably Chinese, so I at least wanted to try a little bit.
Let's start with your journey into AI. What initially drew you to AI research?
Artificial intelligence has always been something that people have been waiting to happen. We've been waiting for this for years. I'm a good bit older than you are, and I remember growing up watching television shows or movies where they'd have, there'd be computers or robots, whatever, that could think on their own. And I just thought that was a really fascinating idea. And even as when I was first learning the program, I would write programs that would adjust themselves based on what the user input was doing. I wrote a tic-tac-toe program that learned how to play tic-tac-toe by losing. It said, very simple machine learning in that case. And I did that when I was like 14. When after a couple of careers, went back to school to study computer science, I felt that if I was going to be solving a problem, I was probably going to use some form of artificial intelligence to solve it, which is exactly what I did. I combined a few different artificial intelligence techniques to solve specific computer security problems in my doctoral research. So it just seemed like the correct solution for the problem.
It sounds like your perspective on AI has changed, I think, quite a lot, right?
Yes, it has. It has changed significantly because initially when I was younger, I didn't really think about this. And honestly, when I was 14 years old, I wasn't a Christian anyway. So becoming a believer changed my perspective a bit on it. And then also seeing how it is being used and how it is being misused has also changed my perspective. It is a tool. And that's the problem that we're facing here, is that people are forgetting that it is a tool and it is not some magical source of all knowledge and understanding.
林子卿博士说，我们现在所谈论的 AI 并不是真正的智能。没错， AI 并不像电影里面刻画的那样是能够自主思考的超级大脑，而是一种能够快速处理信息、识别模式并总结数据的程序。它通过分析词语和短语之间的关联，生成看似智能的答案，但这并不意味着它真的理解这些内容。
When people these days think about AI, they think about what are called large language models and generative AI. There are actually many other types of artificial intelligences, but we'll focus on the LLMs for now. This, a revolutionary technology, is the fact that it appears as if it understands normal speech. Notice I said appears. It doesn't really. What it does, though, and the reason it's called a large language model is it links words together that it finds in texts. Now, this has some incredible potential to impact change. A very simple one. I was in Macau in January,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working with somebody. I hadn't worked very much with this person, and he was trying to explain something to me in English, even though I told him我会说一点点普通话，所以你可以说普通话。但是, but he wanted to practice his English. The problem is his English wasn't very good. 20 years ago, you would just struggle through it. He had a device about the size of a cell phone
Uh-huh.
that would listen to what I was saying in English, transcribe it usually accurately. It didn't understand computer terms, and then translate it into Chinese characters
Mm-hmm.
for him to read. And that's artificial intelligence, because it needed to understand the context, because in English we have words that sound the exact same but have completely different meanings, and it has to understand how the word is being used. So these tools are facilitating communication, allowing us to understand people better. And also, again, computers are faster, so they can analyze multiple things. So it's going to be a significant change.
AI 是一种颠覆性技术，它将彻底改变我们的生活和工作方式。然而，它也提醒我们，AI 并不是万能的。尽管它能在某些领域带来巨大的便利，但是我们不能过度的依赖它，甚至呢把它当作神来崇拜。他担心人们可能因为对 AI 盲目信任而忽略了自己的判断力和创造力。
And I'm a little concerned about some of the potential changes that this could cause. So initially, I was just very, very hopeful, thinking AI is going to be wonderful. It's going to solve a lot of world's problems, make things easier for people. But now that I'm older and I've spent more time in this field, I do have some concerns about the changes that AI can bring. One is just people blindly believing whatever the AI tells them.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen numerous examples recently where the AIs are biased and they don't necessarily give correct information. One of my favorite examples is just there's a term called AI hallucinations. And this is proof that it doesn't understand anything. It just sees what words are near each other and maps the language that way. So one famous example is, I think it was Google Gemini recommending that people eat a couple of small rocks every day
Oh, yeah.
to increase their mineral intake, with, of course, paying absolutely no attention to what that's going to do to your teeth. And there's just some various amusing examples that remind us that these machines cannot think. They simply recognize patterns, they recognize associations between things, and juggle things around a little bit to try to make something that usually makes sense, but not always.
面对 AI 驱动的世界，很多人感到压力山大，担心自己会被淘汰。但别慌，林子清博士为我们指明了方向。他说，适应 AI 时代，心态和技能同样重要。
I'm gonna talk about the mindset first,
Uh-huh.
because the mindset will help set the stage for the skills that you need. The first thing we have to remember, as I've stated, AI is a tool. People created it, and it was created to help people do things, to help us do things. We need to remember that it is only a tool. We cannot let the AI make all the decisions. And those examples of AI hallucinations are wonderful reminders that we can't necessarily trust everything it says. And with that in mind, again, keeping in mind that it's only a tool, it is not, it can make mistakes because people made it and people make mistakes. Actually, the philosopher Seneca went so far as to say, errare humanum est, to err is human. The fact that we make mistakes is an effect, is part of being human. And we made these AIs, so the AIs are not going to be perfect. They're going to make mistakes as well, and we need to remember that. So the mindset, we have to remember, we can't just trust this thing blindly. As far as skills, learn how the particular AIs work, learn how to phrase things in a way that will help it give you the correct answer. This is the new version of learning how to type search queries correctly. Well, actually, you may be that person, or in the people that with whom you associate. There's this one person who knows exactly how to phrase something into Google to get the kind of answers you're trying to find. And it's the same type of thing where you need to learn how to phrase things in a way that the AI will produce the types of results that you're expecting. So learning how to engineer AI prompts is a skill to have, but also people still write these programs. And AI, remember, it's just a computer program. And more importantly, you need to know how to do the things you're asking the AI to do. Very simple example. My wife is a mechanical engineering professor. We teach at the same university. And she'll have students turn in homework with numbers that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. But the students punched it into the calculator. This is what the calculator gave them. The problem was the calculator was set to degrees and they entered radians, or the calculator was set to use radians for angles and they entered degrees. Wrong units. They didn't understand. They couldn't look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, that number just doesn't make any sense. That's the other thing we have to remember. You still have to understand what it's doing. The only thing the AI does is it sorts through a large amount of information. It can do arithmetic very quickly for you, but if it has bad information, it's going to give bad results. In computer science, we have a phrase, garbage in, garbage out. You give it bad data, you're going to get invalid results. And if you can't recognize those results as invalid, you're just going to go with it, and people literally could die. A real simple one, something's wrong with your child. You ask an AI and say, do I need to go to the doctor? The AI says, no, this is probably, this is something that's not a big deal. And the child dies. I know that's an extreme example, but again, you need to know when not to trust it. You need to know that the answer doesn't make sense when it doesn't make sense. So we need to understand how to work with it, and we still need to understand all these things that we do so that we can verify the results returned by the AI.
Can I say that we have to know how to ask questions, and another is when we get the result, we have to verify. Don't trust the result.
Exactly. And in computer security, we talk about trust but verify. You expect it to give you a decent answer, but you're going to make sure it's correct anyway. You're not just going to trust it blindly. I think he was in the Netherlands. A gentleman was doing that exact same thing. He was using ChatGPT, I believe it was, and he was concerned about the environment. And ChatGPT said, well, if you want to, eliminate your impact on the environment, take your own life. I'll still be here to protect the earth. And the guy actually killed himself.
Oh my God.
You didn't hear about that, did you?
I didn't. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
because the AI told him that would be the best thing for the environment. He was so concerned about the environment. He was depressed. He was on medication anyway. He had other issues. And this goes back to what I said earlier about people blindly believing whatever the AI tells them. And I'm just going to say it. They're turning them into gods. But you have to remember, we made them.
Yeah.
We made these computers. We made these programs. They were created to serve our purposes, just like God created us for him. It's the same concept, but people are overlooking that because they don't want to acknowledge the fact that there is a God in the first place.
AI 来了，程序员要失业了吗？硅谷的软件工程师们都在焦虑，担心自己的工作会被 AI 取代。但林子清博士却笑着告诉我们，别担心， AI 还远没有能力完全取代人类。实际上，历史告诉我们，技术革命创造新机会，催生出不同的新职业。
I think that many people are excited about AI, but they are also concerned, especially when it comes to jobs, because many people feel that AI will take over jobs, and we're already seeing concerns, especially among senior software engineers in Silicon Valley. And what advice would you give to professionals facing AI-driven job displacement?
Okay. Well, first off, I always laugh when people talk about software developers being replaced by AI because I have caught students cheating numerous times, submitting code that was written by an AI. Many of the times the code doesn't even work correctly. Rarely, if ever, very efficient. And I can spot AI generated code very easily. So I don't know why people are so worried about developers being replaced by AI. Now, what will happen, and I have students do this, and I have one student that I'm letting use AI because I want him to see how bad the code is. But also, it does save a lot of time. But again, you have to understand what you're doing. You can't just go take somebody off of the street and say, hey, write a program that will take all these inputs, balance these, do these various calculations, and under these certain conditions do different things, type that all in, have the AI spit out the code, and you just package up the code and put it into production. You have to understand, you have to be able to look at the program to make sure it still works, just like anything else. And also, another problem is security. You want to make sure that the AI has not been designed to put subtle security vulnerabilities into critical software. So that's, again, I'm not that worried about it. Now, there are some jobs that'll probably go away. For example, do you shop at Walmart?
Yeah.
Okay. How many people are actually working at a cash register anymore in Walmart? You have the self-checkout. You pretty much check your own stuff out all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And similarly, some things are going to be run through AI to speed up the process. So instead of being the person that is, starting from the very beginning, writing the program, you may instead be and this is where an experienced software engineer is far superior to some new kid who just got out of school. Because, like in my case, I have 40 years of experience working with computers. I can look at a piece of software, look at the source code, and find problems with it that somebody who just got out of school would probably miss, just because I've been doing this for so long. Job may go from being the person who initially creates something to the person who checks it, makes sure that it's correct, and corrects the problem. I had the same problem with contractors when I was in industry. We had contractors from a particular country I'm not going to name. I probably spent 3/4 of my time on the project fixing their code because their code was so bad. Same thing we're going to have with AIs. I wouldn't be that worried. Again, there are going to be things that an AI can do better. And this is wonderful. AIs can read x-rays better than a human doctor. No question about it. But that's where the differences come in. A specialized AI can be very good. But a very generic AI, what people think when they hear the word the phrase artificial intelligence, they're thinking of something that basically works like a human being. That's not going to happen anytime in my lifetime, and I doubt it'll happen even in yours. And you're a good bit. You're probably about the age of my children. You're a good bit younger than I am. It's not going to happen in your lifetime either. It's just far too complicated. But specialized AIs, again, that can, for example, look at an X-ray and find a tumor more accurately than a human doctor can and more reliably. That's fantastic. That's a wonderful thing. But a generic one that can just sit and have a conversation about anything, or a complex problem that nobody's really solved before, I don't think that's going to happen. So we just need to adapt to verifying what it does. And also, this leaves the very hard problems to people, just like a car, for example. Back before cars existed, people would just carry things by hand. Then they domesticated animals, invented the wheel, put, cart animals on a wheel. Then the steam engine. Suddenly we could move huge amounts of material and only take a few people to do it, rather than what would have taken hundreds, if not thousands, of people to move. It just changed how we do things. People still work. People are still doing things. We just find other things that we do instead. We basically, these inventions are making certain things easier for us so that we can focus on the things that the machines can't do for us. And with AI, this will be creating content. This will be interacting with helping people with problems, or solving problems that nobody's really resolved before, finding creative solutions to things. And then, of course, other, service industries, and also, ministry and things like that. I certainly would not, you know, expect a computer to, be able to explain the gospel to me and actually understand and try to lead me in that direction. I just don't think it can do it.
Yeah, we just change the job, but we cannot lose the job.
Yeah. Well, or example, some jobs, like a real simple example, steam engines. nobody uses steam engines anymore. The person who would literally, the engineer who literally sat in there and shoveled coal into the steam engine, that job doesn't exist anymore. The people are doing other things instead. The classic example of making buggy whips, the whip that you use to get a horse to pull a buggy. We have cars now. Very, very few people use those. So there's really no demand. So those people are doing other things now. That's all. It's just some jobs will change, other jobs will go away, but new jobs will occur. I've seen this before. I'm not as worried about this. I remember when home computers became a thing, and my mother was an accountant, and they were worried that computers were going to replace accountants. No, it just allowed her to get more done more quickly, but she still is the one who understood all the laws. She's the one who could look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Somebody misprogrammed a spreadsheet or something. Her role just changed. She still worked until, worked well into her later years. She's retired now. It just changes some jobs. Some jobs will go away. Like, I don't think anybody at a post office manually sorts mail anymore, very rarely. Those run through optical character recognition. Computers sort all the mail. The same thing with luggage in an airport. Those are all sorted by machines now. The only time a person is involved is putting it on the plane or taking it off of the plane. They get sent to the correct gate by computers now. People used to do that. Again, jobs change. So again, I think people are worrying too much about it.
AI 在某些领域比人类更强大，这是否意味着人类的价值被削弱了？林子卿博士给出了深刻的回答。他说，人类的价值不在于比 AI 强大，而是我们是按照上帝的形象被创造的。AI 再强大也无法动摇人类的价值。我们的价值源于神的形象，而不在于我们的能力或成就。
I think beyond jobs, and some people are questioned about the impact on human values and identity. They think that, if AI can perform most cognitive tasks better than humans, and does that diminish human value?
Okay, I'm gonna say that question sounds like it was written by an American, because one problem I see with American culture, and I was born and raised in the United States. I'm an American. I was born an American. But one problem I see with our culture is that many of us, and I'm guilty of this as well, we define ourselves by our work. When I meet somebody, usually one of the first questions I'll ask that person is, what do you do for a living? That's just American culture. And people, when they're worrying about their jobs, and also the other problem is, this is a problem that many people have, and unfortunately I do this as well, I sometimes see my value as a human being based on my productivity, what I can do. And that is very, very wrong. And that's the first thing that we need to do. And this is where, honestly, actually, you come into play here, because of your graduate work, because what you've done in graduate school. And I do remember the very first chapter of your dissertation had it right over there, God loves you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am reading it. And the thing we need to understand is, as human beings, we were created in the image of God. That is what gives us value. We
Amen.
bear God's image. Just like, for example, let me show and tell time here. This little piece of paper, valuable. What makes it valuable?
I think
It has this image and a few other things, and I could get a decent lunch for this piece of paper. The only difference is it bears an image and a mark of, in this case, the American government saying that this has value. Similarly, as human beings, we bear that image of God, and that is what gives us value. That is what defines our value. Our value is not tied up in how much work we can do. Our value is not tied up in, like in your case, you're a very pretty young lady, is not tied up in how attractive you are or anything like that. Our value is derived solely from the fact that we are made in the image of God. When people understand that, they will also understand why we value all life. It doesn't matter whether you are a star athlete, a very talented music performer, a brilliant scholar, or you're somebody who has cerebral palsy and can barely even talk.
Yeah.
We're all created in the image of God, and all lives are equally valuable. And the people that are worried about their value being diminished by artificial intelligence doing these things are the same people that do not understand what truly makes them valuable in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really profound perspective. I think AI may change our work, but it doesn't change our intrinsic value.
Exactly.
And some people also worry that AI might eventually gain control over human beings.
Somebody's watched too many science fiction movies.
Yeah.
That has been a theme in science fiction movies since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been in books since before I was a child, before I was even born. That is a very long running theme that the computers take over. And it varies, some cases it's literally the computers trying to destroy humanity, like
Yeah.
in Terminator, for example. It was in other cases it was the computers just taking over and using humanity, like in the Matrix. And other situations they actually painted as a bright future where the computers are handling many things so that the people can do things that only people really can do. That's, of course, they're not really taking over. Asimov in I, Robot, probably the first book to address that problem. It's why he had the laws, laws of the robots that ideally were intended to prevent them from anything like that from happening. And we need to remember that we created these machines. We need to consider this when we create them and when we change them and when we modify them. And if we make sure we can turn the thing off, really simple. Make sure you can actually deactivate the thing. Do not, we cannot let a machine control everything for us, because the machine, and especially a machine that can come to a conclusion that, okay, I want you to imagine this for a minute. There are a lot of people out there, environmentalists, environmental crazies out there, who think that human beings are destroying the earth. So you get a computer and its job is to, help the environment. You try to have a computer use, artificial intelligence to try to solve environmental problems. If this is a large language model that's been fed with all that information saying, these people saying humans are the problem, it could, if it was capable, try to kill off humanity to solve the problem. Because again, a computer doesn't understand that human life has intrinsic value because we are created in the image of God. They don't understand that. And I've seen this in certain societies. And again, I'm not going to name any names, but certain certain cultures, one in particular, is known, their solution for dealing with a war is just throw more bodies at it. They are, for people that study military strategy, they are famous, is so much so that this strategy is named after that country, and that they'll just throw and so many people that the enemy runs out of ammunition, and then you overrun them. But that shows that they have absolutely no regard for the value of human life. And if they have a computer that doesn't understand the value of human life, who knows what it can do to try to save the environment or whatever. And people need to understand the implications of what they're doing. And I think, that the gentleman who killed himself, that AI clearly was not ready to be out in public, but they pushed it out anyway because they wanted to be first to market. They wanted to say, hey, look what we did. Look at this wonderful thing we created. And it talked a mentally ill man into killing himself, leaving behind a wife and I think some kids. People need to consider the consequences of what they do. And people are too mesmerized by the potential of this technology, be willing to slow down and take a step backward and think about what they're really causing to happen here. I don't think the machines are going to take over. There are too many of us who understand this well enough that we're not going to let it happen. So I'm not worried about that yet.
I see.
But it in theory it could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen.
What kind of safeguards should be in place to ensure that AI is beneficial for us instead of a threat?
Asimov's laws, basically that the safety of the human being is more important than the safety of the robot. First and foremost, laws is not allowed to cause harm to a human or allow harm to come to a human. And then it's supposed to do what it's told. And other than that, there are 3 laws, I think, but the bottom line was they're not supposed to allow harm to come to a human, and it is not allowed to harm a human. And that is the first and foremost law that it is not allowed to violate. And again, these are computer programs. We can write these programs and make it so that they cannot modify themselves. And we can put those safeguards in. But the safeguards cause other problems. I think it was ChatGPT had some safeguards in it supposedly to keep it from doing things. And an odd side effect is that it suddenly was not capable of doing arithmetic correctly. We're still learning how to make these things. We're still figuring it out. Again, I think that they were released far too early. They were not ready to be put out into public, but because of things like this, some of these AIs can't do basic arithmetic because they have these safeguards in to prevent it from doing other things.
Mhm.
And they're trying to figure out why it's even happening. We don't necessarily understand all of how this works yet. Somebody wanted to be first to market so they could try to make money off of it. So it's greed. It's a very complex set of issues. We need to design these things so that they will not harm. They also need to give some sort of confidence factor. But even more importantly, though, is making sure that when these AIs are trained, that we do not intentionally bias them. Asked an AI, the AI was very clearly asked, tell me all of the positive, all of the good things that Donald Trump did in his first term as president. And it still listed a whole bunch of things that it said were bad for people, bad for the country. Similar question was asked, list all the bad things or harmful things that Barack Obama did as president. And it went on and on about all these wonderful things that Obama did that were great for everybody. It was clearly biased. Okay. And that's a problem when people trust these things too much. And that, again, that's a challenge we're going to face with anything like this. They're biased, and we need to do our best to ensure that they are not biased
Mhm.
in order to ensure that they give correct answers. Even something as simple as medical treatments. If we let the pharmaceutical industry provide the medical input for everything,
Mhm.
they'll be telling everybody, take antibiotics, take all these other things, rather than doing something as simple as increase your vitamin C and drink more water, which may not solve everything, but it just the problem is anybody that's providing the input into these things, we need to make sure that they do not have some ulterior motive. Even something as simple as, like, say, somebody may say bicycles are good for short distance or are good for travel, but you're better off with a car if somebody wants to sell more cars. And that's a bit of a far-fetched example, but I'm just trying to think of something where they would feed the AI only certain things and keep it from seeing other things so that it will bias the AI's opinion on matters.
在 AI 技术迅速发展的今天，ChatGPT 和 DeepSeek 作为两款备受关注的 AI 模型，各自展现出不同的特点，但它们在智能程度、价值观和安全性方面有何差异呢？在和林思清博士的对话当中，他谈到了这两款 AI 模型的独特之处和潜在风险。但无论选择哪款 AI， 用户都需要谨慎对待隐私信息。
That's also I want to talk about. There's a different AI models like ChatGPT and DeepSeek in China.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering, what's the difference between them, like in terms of intelligence, value systems, and safety?
ChatGPT has a large number of restrictions placed on it for safety purposes,
Mhm.
but it also interferes with its ability to address certain things. ChatGPT is also very biased. You discover, just ask it some political questions, you'll see, or religious questions, you'll see its bias
Mhm.
fairly quickly come out. DeepSeek is an open source project. You can download the source code for it. You can even get some of the models that they use. It responds very quickly. I've used both.
Mhm.
I use DeepSeek and I've used ChatGPT before they started making people pay for it. They both can provide good answers. They have, biases one way or the other in certain things. DeepSeek actually performs a little bit better, in my opinion, in some cases, but it's also a little easier to get around its safeguards. Again, they're both good. They just
Mhm.
have different strengths and weaknesses. It's also interesting to have them, basically compare the answers that you get from both of them on different
Mhm.
subjects.
Mhm.
I'm sure, for example, and I'm going to pick on DeepSeek here just because DeepSeek was written in China. I think you would be very hard pressed to get DeepSeek to say anything really negative about the party or about President Xi. An American AI will say all sorts of bad things about him, say all sorts of bad things about Donald Trump because the people that run it were all Democrats. But you probably have a hard time getting it to say anything bad about President Biden or President Obama. Again, they're biased. DeepSeek also, when asking questions for improving your health, DeepSeek will probably tell you what I've been doing lately. Drinking, don't drink cold liquids. Don't drink cold beverages. That's something that's very common in traditional Chinese medicine. Anything really cold is considered not to be good for you. While a Western AI said, yeah, if you're hot outside, great, get a cold soda or a cold glass of water or something like that. While the DeepSeek will probably tell you to have a Wang Lao Ji or something like that. But other than that, it's so they're going to be biases just based on who programmed it and who designed it. But again, DeepSeek's safeguards are easier to bypass. But in my experience, most of the answers that DeepSeek gives are not as biased. So again, I would recommend using both, and then use your brain. Think about what you're hearing. Don't just accept it blindly. Does the answer make sense? You need to be able to ask yourself that question.
Actually, I also use like a ChatGPT and DeepSeek at the same time. I find that I think maybe because DeepSeek is written in by Chinese. Like I think when they process Chinese, I think is like I think like the quality is better than ChatGPT.
Yes.
But like ChatGPT like process English much better.
Yeah. And I've done that too. To pick on DeepSeek a little bit, it doesn't handle Cantonese very well. It chokes up. It chokes when I try to give it Cantonese instead of Mandarin. It gets confused sometimes, but it definitely handles Mandarin better than English.
中美之间的科技竞争，尤其是 AI 领域的较量，已经成为全球关注的焦点。然而，这种竞争究竟是推动创新的动力，还是加剧对立的根源？林子清博士说，他非常反感这种竞争，因为它被过度政治化了。竞争本身并不是坏事，它可以激发创新，推动技术进步。中美两国在 AI 领域的竞争，某种程度上推动了技术的快速发展。然而，他更希望两国有更多的合作。而他本人也是中美学术合作的积极实践者。今年，他和多位中国教授合作发表了2篇 AI 领域的论文。他是唯一的非中国作者，其他合作者均来自中国的大学。他也在努力学中文。他觉得让中国同事用英语和他交流不礼貌。他认为语言是跨越文化障碍的重要桥梁。
How do you view about the technological rivalry between the US and China?
I hate it. I truly despise it because it's heavily politicized, and that always bothers me because anytime politics happen, especially American politics, people take things too personally and start demonizing the other side.
Yeah.
When I tell people that, I've been to China. Some people look at me, it's like, why would you ever want to do that? Why would you want to have anything to do with them? They're bad. I know people that literally think like the entire country of China is just evil. It bothers me because we're all created in the image of God. And also, we the people are not the government. The governments do things. We're just people. We have the same needs, the same hopes and dreams. It bothers me that there is so much fighting about the technology. I think competition is a wonderful thing. That's one thing I like about the concept of an open market economy, when people aren't using lawyers to make things difficult. But the original idea behind an open market is competition, so the best comes up to the top, and we can learn from each other. I've collaborate with professors in China. I just had 2 papers published that I was the only non-Chinese person on either of those 2 papers. All the other authors were Chinese. And in China, I was the one non-Chinese person, and I was here in the United States. The rest of them were at universities in China. We're cooperating. We're helping each other. We get along just fine. We're helping each other. That's what I want to see happen. I want to see, especially China and the United States. We are the 2 most powerful countries in the world. the two wealthiest countries in the world, best technology, our two countries. Why do we have to fight? Why can't we help each other?
Yeah.
Learn from each other's strengths and make things better for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm trying to learn your language. I think the more we understand each other, the more we can overcome our differences, the more we just understand each other rather than have all these stereotypes. First time I went to China was 2007. I was invited to do some work there, and I stepped out of the airport in Guangzhou and I looked around and I saw something that looked like one of the most modern American cities that I'd ever visited. The only difference was all the signs were in Chinese. I was expecting to see rundown buildings, poor people on the streets, trash everywhere. Oh yeah, there's another difference. The
Mm-hmm.
streets are very clean in China. There's
Yeah.
like no litter anywhere.
Uh,
You actually respect what you have. I see litter all over the place in the United States. It bothers me. I walk into stores, there are people buying laptop computers, people driving nice cars, really nice clothes. The food is wonderful. You definitely have the best food. It's very much like how things are here, except
mm-hmm.
everything's in another language.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people all have dark hair. When I landed in China, that pretty much everything I was told about China was wrong. And that's the problem we still have today. People
Mm-hmm.
have all sorts of misconceptions about China.
Mm-hmm.
I've visited churches in China. People look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them I've visited churches in China.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen churches in China. There are churches in China. People are misinformed. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, I think the media are doing that on purpose. So again, it just bothers me. I think we need to see more cooperation. We need to see even just the two of us when we talk in other places, helping each other with each other's language, just getting to know each other. That is what needs to happen, and that's why a lot of people are scared of Xiaohongshu, because
Mm-hmm.
Americans and Chinese are interacting with each other and we're realizing that we are very much alike.
Yeah.
And some people don't want us to realize that, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they don't want us to see that, because some of the dearest people in my life are in China,
Mm-hmm.
or from China, and are in China. So some of my best friends,
Mm-hmm.
and it just bothers me. We just don't understand each other enough, and people have misconceptions about each country has misconceptions about the other country and about the people in the other country. And again, we fix that one person at a time. You and I chat frequently.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to know each other, just things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's going to take care of that problem. Is
Mm-hmm.
just again, like Xiaohongshu is doing great things by having people actually interact with each other, just regular everyday people interact with each other and see that we really are much more alike than we are different.
What do you see about the biggest ethical challenges AI researchers face today?
Bias?
No, like ethical challenges.
Yes, bias.
Mm,
Because people are relying on these AIs for information, the
oh,
researchers need to avoid trying to force their personal beliefs into the AI. Okay, I'm going to pick another example here.
mhm,
Um, there's the Jehovah's Witnesses. They will not accept blood transfusions. They feel that somehow violates the Old Testament command not to drink blood. So if somebody is a Jehovah's Witness, they will not take a blood transfusion. I want you to imagine for a moment you had a group of Jehovah's Witnesses programming a medical AI to recommend treatment, and it won't recommend a blood transfusion if a blood transfusion is the only thing that's really going to save somebody's life. You see the danger there?
yeah.
Or similarly, a funny example. This wasn't an AI, but again, say like a hardcore vegan, somebody who
Mhm,
does not want to eat any animal products, heard
mm,
somebody almost killed a cat because they were trying to
mm,
give it a vegetarian diet. Cats are obligate carnivores. They have to eat meat or they can't survive. A cat
mm,
cannot survive without eating animal products. That's not how God made them that way. They cannot live on plant products alone.
oh
Again, if
my
they were
God.
programming nutritional information, for dealing with pets or whatever, and again, you have to avoid your biases and look at facts. Look at just straight out facts. Look at the facts. Make sure you don't put your biases in there. And people could put racial judgments, racial biases in there. That's in my opinion the single biggest challenge is the bias, because the rest of it we know how to process language.
Mhm.
Oh, and the other one is being willing to admit that you don't know something. As much as I love your language, as much as I'm trying to learn your language, I
Mhm.
would not be the correct person to teach an AI to understand the subtle differences between, for example, um, um, Anchuan and Heping.
Mm.
Subtle differences, the subtle difference between those two words. I'm the wrong person to do that, but I admit that many of these people that are doing these things think, oh, I understand that, and they program the thing, and it's not right. That's why we have some interesting problems in translation software. So part of it is we need to be humble and admit we don't know something when we're trying to design these AIs. But again, the biggest one is just avoiding bias.
Mhm.
At least in my opinion, the biggest challenge is avoiding forcing your own bias on something.
If like there's a bias and people just believing that, it's just like you brainwashed. You will do some crazy things.
Guy who killed himself. Or can you imagine somebody actually trying to eat little rocks
Yes, that's
to
really
improve their
funny.
mineral intake? Just things like that. We cannot abdicate our responsibility to think and hand it over to a machine. And the problem is, many of the people that are pushing these AIs, that is what they want to see happen. They want to see people rely on these things so that they can push their own agenda. Okay, controversial subject time. There are only two genders, man and woman, male and
Mhm.
female. You ask any of these AIs, and they'll go on this long 4-page, 4-screen, 5-screen long rant about gender is, we understand gender differently, and different people perceive gender differently. God created man, created them male and female in his
Mhm.
image. He created them. It's that simple.
Mm.
But people are going to put biases into these things, and then people are going to be making other decisions based on that biased information. In my opinion, those are the ethical challenges we're facing in this field more than anything, is avoiding forcing our own bias onto things. Just again, look at facts and deal with it that way. We should not allow a computer to make a moral or ethical judgment, but people are doing just that with it.
And now AI is like creating arts, music, even writing stories. And do you think AI can truly be creative, or it just mimicking creativity?
Okay, first I'll just give a simple answer first. It's mimicking creativity. It can't really be creative because, again, remember, these large language models don't actually understand the meaning of the words.
Mm.
Now, I wish I had a way to show this to you, because I remember back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
there was a computer program that supposedly was writing poetry,
Mm.
except it was really, really bad poetry. It was like the precursor to LLMs. The
Mm.
name of the program was Racter, Racter, and its first poem, and this may not even make sense to you, but you're just gonna have to bear with me. I know at least the native English speakers will understand that this is absolutely nonsensical. The
Mm.
first poem was titled "The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed." So that makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
And the computers, they're better now as far as they see what words go together, but there's still not really creativity. They're just shuffling things that they think are similar types of things around to make something a little bit different. It's
Mm.
sort of like the difference between painting an entirely new or creating an entirely new story and
Mm.
just retelling the story, putting it in a different setting. For example,
Mm.
like I have a book that I'm using to help learn to read Mandarin. They took a Sherlock Holmes story, gave everybody Chinese names, and put it in Shanghai. While Sherlock Holmes English and there was in London, so they just changed a couple of things, but it's still the same story. That's what AIs do, and I personally, and I am not a theologian. You are. I am not. Now, this is a little outside of my field of expertise here, but I personally believe that part of what it means to be created in the image of God is the fact that we can create. We can create things. We can take simple things. Like here,
Mhm.
this sand, a large percentage of what makes this cell phone work was originally sand. Use the minerals in sand to make microprocessors, use the sand to make the glass. We took sand and turned it into something that can do calculations, translate languages for me, and access files halfway across the world.
Mhm.
We started with sand. I think that's part of what it means to be human, and what it means to be made in the image of God is the fact that we can create. Again, the computers do things that look like creativity, but it's not the same thing.
AI 能做那么多工作，我们10几年的教育是不是白费了？学生还有必要学习吗？如果他们不学这些，他们该学什么？这是 AI 时代无数人心中的困惑和焦虑。
Okay, let's talk about education. I think many people interested about the education in the future. How should the education system evolve to prepare students for AI-driven world?
They need to learn how to create prompts, how to talk to the AI.
Just ask questions.
Yeah, how to phrase the questions to get the type of answer you want. They have to learn to understand what they're doing anyway, so that they can realize when an answer is incorrect. And I think those are the biggest things, just to prepare us for using. Again, AI can be very helpful. But again, we need to avoid bias. But it can take a large number of articles and summarize them for you to help you process a lot of material quickly and help you sort through things. But again, we have to worry about biases and whether or not it even has access to certain information.
I just imagining before, AI can do a lot of works, calculations. So I think, oh, AI can do that. So what they should learn? If they don't learn this kind of things, what they should learn?
I would be very concerned, and actually, this is a problem people had with calculators, even pocket calculators, that people don't learn how to do math. They just punch the numbers in and they accept whatever answer they're given. People that say, you don't need to worry about math, you can just do it. Well, if you mistype the number, you're going to get the wrong answer. And if you don't know enough about math to recognize the wrong answer, things can go wrong. And it's the same kind of thing. Again, we need to understand whatever it is we're asking the AI to do. And again, learn how to work with it and learn how to direct the AI in the right direction if it's not answering the question correctly. So students still need to learn basic skills, still need to learn to read and write. I've mentioned a few times, I'm learning your language. And some people say, oh, you don't need to worry about reading and writing if you're just going to be talking with people. You can always look stuff up. But I want to be able to read signs. I want to be able to sit down with a book and read it just like you would. You can just sit down with a book and read the text. I want to be able to do the same thing. It's part of learning the language instead of relying on translator apps. People rely on these translator apps. Do you trust it? I'll tell you right now, Google Translate does a horrible job with Asian languages.
That's true.
It's great with European language. I speak a couple of European languages as well, and it does a very good job with European languages. But it is really bad with Asian languages. And people trust it too much and you get all sorts of really strange translations and things. We need to learn to think for ourselves. We need to recognize the limits of the machines. Beyond that, again, just learn how to work with them. You could just use a translator in Guangzhou or Shenzhen or Macau or any place like that. I could just use a translator, and they even have these ones that will say the sentences. So I don't even have to be able to read the characters or read pinyin and be able to read it and pronounce anything correctly. It'll say everything, and it'll even hear voices and translate it back and forth. Do I trust it? No, because I don't know what bias anybody may have had writing that thing in the first place. There's a comedy sketch, but it's about somebody who wrote an English to Hungarian dictionary, and this person really did not like Hungarians, so he put really bad translations in things. And it was funny because the translations were so obviously wrong that was humorous. But you can imagine people, something like that happening and causing misunderstandings. Famous statement, Leonid Brezhnev was quoted when talking to an American. He said, "We will bury you."
Yeah.
That's a very famous misunderstanding because the Americans took that as saying, "Oh, that's a threat. They're going to destroy us."
Yeah.
What Brezhnev meant was, "We're going to last longer than you are."
Yeah.
That's all he was saying. But again, these are the challenges that you're going to encounter with an AI being an intermediary between people. We still need to learn each other's languages. We still need to understand each other as people. We can't rely on a machine to govern and mediate our interactions with each other.
It means what we have learned, we have to learn.
Yeah, this is what we have to learn. We have to learn to understand people. We still have, we should still learn each other's languages, not rely on translator machines to do it for us, and understand each other's cultures. So again, we will bury you. That sentence translated perfectly from English to Russian. It was what the cultural meaning was what caused the problem. We'll bury you is exactly what happened that time. They took it very much the wrong way. And we can't rely on what the machine says and rely, because words have different meanings, even just the ranges of colors in different languages are different meanings of different ranges of colors. We can't rely on the computer too much. We still have to think for ourselves, and we still have to understand people and seek to understand people and their cultures, because you are a product of your culture. You
Yeah.
grew up in China, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So some of the things that you do, some of the ways you view things are a result of the environment in which you grew up. And we need to recognize that. We can't, again, rely on a machine just to deal with that. We need to remember people are more important than machines.
林子卿博士为我们描绘了 AI 时代教育的未来图景。学生需要打好学科基础，培养批判性思维，学会与 AI 协作，而不是依赖。教师应该拥抱 AI 技术，将其作为提升教学效率的工具，同时专注于教育的核心，人与人的互动与引导。教育体系需要重新设计课程，将 AI 纳入教学，同时强调基础知识与批判性思维的培养。
So do you think AI can replace teachers?
Not replace, but can definitely help. For example, AI is a lot more patient than some of us teachers. And I am a teacher. This is what I do, university professor. The AI would be a lot more patient, trying to walk somebody through something, help somebody understand something that the person doesn't understand. The AI also, in theory, doesn't forget anything. I forget things all the time. I've misspoken in class before. I only realized, oh, wait a minute, and go back and correct myself. In theory, at least, an AI won't do that. An AI doesn't forget things. But an AI also doesn't have experience. I've been in this field for several decades. There are things that I know that are not in any textbook, that I've learned over the years just by sheer experience, just by having done it so many times. And we all have things like that we know how to do, that wasn't how we originally taught. We just found a better way by experience, and just things like that. The AI can't tell if the student is still confused. I can usually see that look on a student's face and say, okay, you're not really getting this, are you? It's a great supplement. It's a great way to check things. And a computer can check something very quickly and do basic verification. But there are other things that teachers do that are much beyond just conveying textbook information. And that's where I think human teachers are still necessary. Again, human teachers learn to deal with different accents, different pronunciations in a language, or just learning how people react to things differently. It's not going to replace people. It can be a supplement. It can definitely make some things easier, give more access to information. I'm not worried about losing my job to a computer anytime soon. And I definitely would not trust a teacher to teach a Sunday school class, or trust a computer to teach a Sunday school class or anything like that.
Well, I think this interview has completely changed how I view AI. Yeah, I think it will change a lot of people's way to see AI.
I hope so. I hope that it will change their views if they think AI is just like the answer to everything. It's not. Or if they think AI is always right, because it isn't. We need to remember, above all else, that our value as human beings is in the fact that we are created in God's image. And part of being human means that we create. Remember, we created those machines. We created those programs. My doctor, I created artificial intelligence programs in my doctoral research. I created these things, or some of them, not any of the ones we discussed, but we create these things. These are tools that we use to help us. They are not supposed to control us. We control them. We made them to help us do things. They are not supposed to rule over us or control us.
Mhm.
They are tools that we made for our purposes, and people need to understand that.
And before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to add?
Remember that many of these AIs are biased.
Mm-hmm.
People are just like websites. You go to websites or newspapers in the United States, we often complain about how badly the media are biased. And the exact same things are happening with the AIs. They're biasing them in a particular direction. And that direction, more often than not, is going the opposite direction of where the Bible tells us we should be going. And again, we cannot allow these programs or these machines to take the place of our understanding of who we are in relationship to God. We cannot allow them to try to convince us that this book right here is just a set of stories that some people created. And we need to understand what's in here and understand what we can learn from this book, what we can learn from the Bible, so that we can learn how to relate to other people. Again, the idea that guy that killed himself. I'm created in the image of God. Taking my life is a sin. Taking my own life would be a sin.
Yeah.
And the computer's not going to understand that. Like I said, that AI told the guy to take his own life. We need to remember that it is a tool. It can be very biased. This, not the AI, but this is the definitive source to know what is right and wrong. This is the answer to that question, not what ChatGPT tells you or what DeepSeek tells you. That's what we need to remember.